Hello, welcome to the Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Today, we're going to return back to this book. It is a collection of René Descartes' metaphysics. This time we're going to be talking about René Descartes' The Principles of Philosophy. And we're going to be talking about part one of that work, which is called The Principles of Human Knowledge. And that's basically another breakdown of René Descartes' metaphysics. He's talking about human knowledge, but he talks about it on a metaphysical level. And I'll break that down as we move on in the video. But first, I want to talk to you about this edition. It is a Penguin Classics edition, and I like Penguin Classics. The reason why I like Penguin Classic editions is because they have really good translators. They really do. I think the translators do a good job of assuming that the person reading it is just a normal reader. He's not like a very professional. He's not professionally trained in the discipline that the book is about, like philosophy. I didn't study. I took like 2 classes of philosophy in college, and they were just elective courses. They were very general, right? So I don't have like a degree in philosophy or anything like that. I just study philosophy as a hobby. I'm an amateur. I'll decide I just do it for fun. And the translations of these philosophy books from Penguin Classics, they do a really good job of breaking down philosophy for like a layman like me. Let me show you. Well, first of all, let me give you the name of the translator. His name is Desmond M. Clark, right? And so the Principles of Philosophy, part 1, it's just a long essay, right? But the translator breaks it down into sections. And like you can see here, check this out. Not only does he break it down into sections, he numbers them, and then he gives like a little subtitle for each subsection. Now, if you're like an expert in philosophy, you don't have to, acknowledge those sections. You could just ignore them because it's all in the same order, and you could just like skip over them. But for somebody like me, because philosophers sometimes they'll start going off into these long-winded, very meaningful, thought-provoking discussions, but they're very chunky and beefy, and they have a lot of ideas, and it takes a while to process. So it's good to have like a subtitle that kind of introduces you to the long breakdown before it happens, so you're ready. So you don't get lost, because oftentimes philosophers will go back and forth, or they'll jump around in different topics. I don't know if they realize they're doing this now. I don't think they are sometimes. But the sectioning off really helps out. I like it a lot. And another thing that I do is they do it so much that I actually write like little footnotes, or like little things in the margin that summarize the sections to help me out. Right? But the thing is, thanks to the subtitles, I highlighted some in orange, like the subtitles from the translator. I don't need to write little summaries because the translator summarized the section already. So I could it helps me out a lot, is what I'm saying. And I think if you're like just getting into philosophy, or you just kind of read philosophy as like a hobby, you're not really professional, I think Penguin Classics is a great way to do it, to start off. Maybe you disagree, maybe you got some other books. If you like various editions, if you got some favorite editions that you would like to share, feel free to share them in the comments down below. So I mention that because what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reading some of the translator's subtitles for the various sections before I start getting into what René Descartes is saying. So let's get to it. Let's get right into it right now. This is a section. Here's what the translator's subtitle of this section is. There are only 2 modes of thinking in us, namely the perception of the intellect and the operation of the will. And okay, now we're going to go into the translation of what René Descartes is talking about. Right, here we go. Thus, all the modes of thinking that we experience in ourselves can be referred to 2 general types, one of which is perception, or the operation of the intellect, and the other is willing, or the operation of the will. So what René Descartes is saying, I feel, what I got from it is, he's basically breaking down thinking in 2 different ways, right? One of the ways he's breaking it down is he's talking about the interpretation of perception. That's one way we think. We interpret perceptions. And that's a very prevalent idea in philosophy. The idea that we have perceptions of objects in the world. We base all of our thinking and all of our judgment off of our interpretation of these perceptions. Very big concept in philosophy, just in general. And then the other type of thinking he says is free will, or what Descartes says, the operation of the will. Let's continue. Okay, this is another subtitle from the translator, because we're going on to the next section. This is what the translator says. We make mistakes only when we make a judgment about something that is not adequately perceived. Now we're going on to the translation of Descartes. However, when we perceive something, it is obvious that we are not mistaken as long as we do not affirm or deny anything about it. The same is true also when we affirm or deny only what we perceive clearly and distinctly should be affirmed or denied. Error arises only when we make a judgment about something even though we do not perceive it properly. Again, this is a really big a concept in philosophy, very common. And then even René Descartes talks about this in his Meditations on First Philosophy. Error occurs when people make judgment calls off of misinterpretations of perceptions. Immanuel Kant argued that we don't really know what anything really is. Really, truly, we don't know what anything really is. All we can know is our perception of what something is. That's okay, right? But when it gets bad, when we make a mistake, is that we assume that we start to know exactly what that something is. And in that way, it makes us define that something in a way that's wrong, right? And that's where we start messing up. We misinterpret our perception. We don't realize the limitations of our perception. Okay, that's nothing new, right? If you read philosophy regularly, or if you've seen some of my videos already. I mean, if you haven't, this is the first video you've seen from me, or you don't read philosophy that much, that might be new to you. And I just want to tell you that it's a very common concept in philosophy. Let's continue. So I'm just going straight to René Descartes right now. This is what René Descartes is saying. Now, the perception of the intellect extends only to the few things that are accessible to it, and it is always very limited. But the will may be said to be infinite in some sense because we never notice anything that can be the object of someone else's will, or even of the immense will of God, which is outside the scope of our will. Thus, we easily extend our will beyond the things that we perceive clearly, and when we do this, it is not surprising if we happen to be mistaken. I find that very interesting. I don't know what you got from that, but what I got from that is very interesting. So basically what I think René Descartes is saying there is that these two types of ways of thinking, interpreting perception, that's finite. That's limited because we only have so many senses, right? So we can only perceive something in only so many different ways. There are many different other ways we can perceive something, but we are only limited to our senses. Again, that's nothing new, very common theme in philosophy. But then the other way of thinking, the operation of the will, or I would say free will, that's infinite. That has no limitations. And that's very interesting when you think about it. He even brings up God, right? If you bring up the religious aspect of it, God has a will that he wants you to follow. But you can choose not to follow it if you want. Now think about that. You got this omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient being, this infinite being that, he has a will that he wants you to follow. But you don't have to follow that ultimate alpha omega being if you don't want to. Like you have the choice not to follow his will. And in that way you can already start to argue that if that's allowed, then there's no other limit. If you could choose not to follow that will, then by definition your free will is infinite, right? But you could even take it on a human level, right? Let's say you're somebody who disagrees with the government, what the government is telling you to do. You don't have to follow laws. You really don't. I mean, there's consequences for not following laws. You get thrown in jail. You can be fined. You could be put to death in some situations. There are consequences, but you can choose to accept those consequences. You could choose to, or you could choose not to acknowledge those consequences. And you can do whatever you want, ultimately. You have the free will to do it. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that, but I'm just saying there's a fact. You can't do all that stuff if you what, and then you can even go so far with dictators or tyrants. They force these wills on you to follow, like you must do this, you have to do this. If you don't do that, we gotta throw you in prison, we gotta torture you, we're gonna kill you. But you don't have to if you don't want to. You can choose, okay, throw me in prison, torture me, kill me. I'm not gonna do this. Nobody could ultimately force you to do anything. Now you might have to deal with some really heavy consequences, but if you're up to doing that, then ultimately nobody can force you to do anything. Your will is infinite. But then Descartes says later on that this infinite aspect of the operation of our will leads to mistakes. That's another area where mistakes can happen, and that's true. I just gotta throw an example out there. Let me think of an example. Let's say like you're a teenager and you fall in love, you're infatuated with like one of those bad girls or bad boys. You're like, you see somebody, you're a girl, you see this bad boy on a motorcycle, you like, ooh, that guy, I'm in love with him. Or if you're a guy, same, you just fall in love with a bad boy, bad girl type of situation. And your parents, your guardian, mom, dad, whoever is telling you, no, you can't go out with this person. This person is bad news. They're gonna lead you astray. They're not gonna be any help to you. Don't go out with this person. But you're like, you don't understand him, daddy. You don't understand her, mom. You don't understand him. You don't understand her. I love this person. This person means the world to me. You don't understand that. You just like got a la land infatuation. And then your parents even go so far as say, all right, that's it. You're not to see him. And if you are grounded. You're this. You can't do this. You can't do that. Your curfew is this, that, and the other thing. All that stuff. And, maybe even you just choose to ignore all that. You're like, I'm running away from home. Forget this. I'm going to run away with him. We're going to get hitched. Blah, 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 blah. And, that type of stuff happens, right? So, you have all these things supposedly forced on you. There's all these consequences that you have to deal with. But you can choose, what? I'm going to follow my will. I'm infatuated. I think I love this guy. I think I love this girl. I'm going to go out and marry this person or, do whatever with this person. But then after a while, what happens? Reality sinks in. You find out the guy or the girl really is a jerk. The person treats you like garbage. Things like that happen. And you realize you made a terrible mistake. So, if you were restricted, your will was restricted. If you didn't have the choice to follow your personal will, and you had to follow your parents' will, you'd be okay. You might not be happy at first, but you'd be okay. But the fact that you were able to choose to do your own thing, and now you're messed up. Maybe you got to deal with stuff. Maybe you had a kid or whatever with this person. Now you got to deal with all those consequences. And in that way, Descartes saying that the infinite aspect of the operation of your will can lead you to mistakes if you choose the wrong thing to do. Let's move on, because it gets really deep here. So again, I'm going with the translator's subtitle of this section. Here's what he says. The highest human perfection is to act freely or voluntarily and thereby to be worthy of praise or blame. Okay, now here's the translation of René Descartes. It is consistent with its nature for the will to extend very widely and is, in a sense, the highest perfection for human beings to act through the will. That is freely and thus in a certain special way to become the author of their own actions and to merit praise for them. Automata. However, we are not praised if they display exactly all the movements for which they were designed, because they do so out of necessity. Instead, their designer is praised for having made them so precisely, because the designer constructed them freely and not out of necessity. For the same reason, when we embrace the truth, we are praised for doing so, much more because we embrace it voluntarily than if we were incapable of not embracing it. I think that's really deep. Let me read you the little footnote that I wrote on the margins, my initial thought. God has granted our will to extend beyond our intellect, allowing us to discover spiritual truth. As we learn from our mistakes, we become more spiritually aware. That was pretty much my first instinctive thought when I read that. And, it's about free will as an opportunity. If you give somebody the ability to choose truth or to not choose truth, that provides them with the opportunity. Let's think about this. If the true nature of reality, if it was laid out right in front of us, if it was just there, and we knew it, we knew everything, we knew the meaning of life from the get-go. Somebody just told us it, whether it was God or we just automatically knew it when we were born, right? We wouldn't have the opportunity, right, to discover it on our own. We would just know it. And there would be it would be meaningless to not accept truth, because we know that that's the true nature of reality. So to go against it would be it would be illogical, right? Because we would already know that when we don't accept it, it's false. Basically, it wouldn't allow us the opportunity to grow as beings. It wouldn't allow us the opportunity to discover, to search for truth, to search for meaning. And that search, that ability to do that, Descartes says searching for truth and discovering it allows us the opportunity to be worthy, to be praised. Like that makes us great. Like you now we can say that you're a good person or you're a bad person because you've searched for truth, right? Or if you don't accept truth, if you kind of live by the whole ignorance is bliss, then now we can blame you. One could say that you didn't put enough effort into your ability to deserve praise, right? And you can take it that way, and I guess you could go a meaningful way with that. But the way I see it, again, I'm a Christian, I'm a religious person. It allows for the opportunity to choose to search for truth. It allows you to build yourself spiritually, right? Because if we already knew truth already out there, like if we knew that, let's say we just knew already that God existed. Let's say that God was like just, you was able to see him with your eyes, right? And you knew his presence was there through the senses, right? You could touch him, you could look at him. Not only that, he forced you, this is how it's gonna be, okay? This is the true way of how to live, okay? So you could do that, or that's all there is to it. And we didn't even have the ability, not even the ability to say, I don't want to do that. I don't want to follow you. We didn't even have that opportunity or that ability or that chance to do that. Then in a way, what happens is that we're kind of denied this opportunity to understand who he really is, to understand his nature, to understand why is existence the way he set it up, the way it is, and why is it good that you follow in his way, right? But then you don't even have to go the religious way. You can just say to search for truth on a philosophical level, or just searching for truth scientifically. Like if we already knew the true nature of universe, the true physical nature of the universe, because right now we're starting to get into the quantum mechanics, quantum physics. We're beginning to understand it, but a lot of it's still a mystery to us. A lot of it is still, we don't really understand it. But if we understood all of that already from the beginning, and we had no real opportunity to discover it on our own, what chance do we really have to develop as beings, to become worthy, really, to become worth anything? The opportunity for us to do any type of good or to contribute anything to anybody. If we didn't have the opportunity to choose to search for truth or to choose ignorance as bliss, right? If we didn't have that opportunity, I feel like that we wouldn't be able to spiritually grow. Our spirit would kind of be stunted. We wouldn't be able to discover truth, and therefore kind of existence would pretty much be meaningless. It's kind of hard to kind of go there, because it's kind of hard to kind of understand what would it be like to just know everything, the truth off the get-go. That's really difficult for me to comprehend anyway. And what would that really mean? It's kind of hard for me to break it down. But I'm just thinking, as I, just as my discover, like, just reading philosophy as a hobby, just reading these just philosophy books, looking at philosophical programs that have been televised and things like that, it's really helped develop me as a better person. Just same thing with not going to church and just being brought up into church, and not just like just going through the motions of just going to the church and dress it up and just the hour leave, just really actually sitting down reading the Bible, trying to understand what it really means, and just learning from the lessons the Bible is saying, things like that. I've just become a better person. Also confronting people who are just associated with people, or even making friends with people who disagree with my points of view and my perspectives, and just having discussions about it. That has just made me a much better person. It's built me up spiritually, and I've become more understanding of people. I've become more compassionate. I think I've become more kind. I'm finding more and more meaning in life the more I search for truth, really. And if I didn't have that opportunity to do that, would it all be really worth it? I don't know. But I don't know, that's what I'm kind of getting from that quote. I mean, it was a very powerful quote for me, and maybe it wasn't for you, and maybe what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you that much. But I just feel like, just if we just keep it on the realm of philosophy, right? I love studying philosophy so much, because I just love thinking about just the true nature of things, and what things actually mean, and how you can apply that meaning to make life meaningful, worth living, and how we can help each other by everybody understanding the true nature of just existence. Because I think people kind of get trapped into a false sense of existence, and it is sad, because it's like you're stunting your growth. You're not developing as a human being. You're not developing as a person, really. You're blocking your spirit. I feel. And just philosophy is just so, it really is, in my opinion, the translator talks about, he summarized that section by saying human perfection is that ability to choose. And I think the discipline of philosophy is like the manifestation of that choosing, the exercise of that choosing. It's an exercise of human perfection, honestly. I mean, that's how I feel. I love philosophy, and I think philosophy is a great way to develop yourself spiritually, to become more spiritually aware. And to be quite honest, I'm kind of rambling here. I'm kind of going every which way but loose, right? But tell me what you think. If you have an opinion, you might disagree with me completely, and it's all good. I'm not bothered at all by people who disagree with me. I think I love that people who disagree, and we can talk about it. As long as you're willing to have a conversation about it, that's cool. I don't like people who just disagree and call it a day and like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. It's like, let's talk about it. Let's discuss, and maybe we could both become better people by advancing our idea of what this really means. Maybe you agree with me. We could talk about it. What do you think? About the whole thing about free will and the ability to choose, and would life be better if we just had all the information up front, and if we just didn't have this opportunity to search for truth? If the truth was already there, would life be better? I don't think so. I think this is a great opportunity that has been given to us, or that is laid upon us, if you will, that we can search for truth, search for meaning, and talk about it and discourse about it. It's valuable, I think. How is it valuable? Talk to me about it. Comment below, or not. You just read it, think about it on your own. You do whatever you want. But it's just me musing on René Descartes' The Principles of Philosophy, Part 1. It's not that long a read. It's a very short read, and it was cool. It was cool. I liked it a lot. Well, you've been watching The Black Ponder. I'm Neil Trotter. Thank you for watching. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.